At the bustling town fair, the air was thick with the scents of roasted corn and sweet molasses, mingling with the raucous laughter and chatter of the gathered crowd. Children ran between stalls, and townsfolk mingled with vendors hawking everything from fresh apples to hand-forged horseshoes. Amid the lively scene, Clara stood hesitantly near the edge of the corral, her eyes fixed on the wooden fence that enclosed a sleek brown horse. The creature's glossy coat shimmered under the afternoon sun, its mane flowing gently in the breeze. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the other riders mount with ease, their boots clicking against the stirrups, their faces alight with confidence. She adjusted the wide brim of her hat, trying to steady her trembling hands. Her reflection in a nearby polished window showed a woman round and soft, her curves filling the modest dress she wore, and her cheeks flushed with a mixture of excitement and dread. As she edged forward, a few townspeople noticed her and began to whisper, their voices rising with amusement. "Look at her trying to ride. Surely she can't handle a horse, not with that size." Another voice chimed in. "She'll scare the poor beast just by sitting on it." Laughter erupted, sharp and unkind, cutting through the festive sounds like a jagged blade. Clara's cheeks burned hotter, the sting of their mockery sinking deep. She felt every eye upon her, not with encouragement, but with judgment. The whispers morphed into louder jeers. "Step aside. The circus is coming through," and "maybe she should just stick to knitting." The cruel words echoed, bouncing off the wooden stalls and into her very bones. Her resolve wavered, and for a moment, Clara considered retreating, slipping away from the crowd and the humiliation. She took a shaky step back, her fingers tightening around the worn leather reins that had been offered to her by the fair's caretaker. The horse shifted its weight, sensing her hesitation, and nickered softly. The scornful faces blurred before her eyes as she fought the tears threatening to spill. She wanted to prove them wrong, to show them that she was more than the sum of their jeers, but fear knotted her stomach. The crowd's laughter seemed endless, a relentless tide pulling her under. A little girl nearby tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Why's that lady so big? Can she even ride a horse?" The mother shushed her but didn't offer any comfort to Clara. She felt utterly alone, a spectacle for cruel amusement. Clara took a deep breath, the rough cotton of her blouse damp with sweat. She glanced down at the reins again, then up at the horse, its large dark eyes calm and patient. Somewhere beneath the shame and uncertainty, a small spark of determination flickered. She wanted to try, to climb onto the horse's back, to feel the freedom of the ride, even if it was just for a moment. But the crowd's laughter swelled once more, drowning out the quiet hope within her. "Come on, Clara, you'll break the saddle," called a voice, followed by a chorus of laughter. The words wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Clara stepped back toward the fence, her hands trembling. She looked down at her feet, then out at the open field beyond the fairgrounds, where horses ran wild and free. The contrast between their grace and her clumsy fear was stark. She felt trapped, caught between the desire to prove herself and the crushing weight of public scorn. The fair's music played on, oblivious to the storm inside her. Children's laughter mingled with the rattle of wagon wheels and the cries of vendors, but Clara's world narrowed to the circle of mocking faces and the horse waiting silently for a rider. Her breath hitched, and she clenched the reins tighter. A part of her longed to flee, to disappear into the crowd, and spare herself the humiliation. Yet another part whispered that she could do this, that with courage, she might just overcome the harsh judgment that pinned her down. But the fear was loud, and the crowd's cruelty louder still. The weight of their expectations, their sneers, pressed down on her shoulders like an unyielding burden. Clara's legs felt weak, and her heart ached with the sting of rejection, not just from strangers, but from the unspoken voice within that doubted her worth. She cast one last glance at the horse, its steady gaze meeting hers, and the fair's laughter ringing in her ears. The moment hung suspended, fragile and uncertain, as Clara stood at the crossroads of shame and hope, unsure if she would mount the horse or turn away forever. As Clara lingered by the corral's edge, wrestling with the turmoil inside her, a broad-shouldered man approached from the opposite side of the fairgrounds. His boots were dust-streaked, and his hands bore the calluses of years spent working the land. His eyes, however, held a calm warmth that cut through the harshness of the crowd. "Don't mind them," he said, his voice low but steady, as he stopped beside her. "Folks can be cruel when they don't understand." He nodded toward the circle of onlookers, who were already shifting their attention elsewhere. "I'm Tom. I run a ranch just outside town." Clara glanced up, startled by the kindness in his gaze. His presence was a stark contrast to the scorn she'd just endured. She hesitated, then managed a small nod. "I'm Clara." Tom smiled gently. "I saw you watching the horses. You want to learn to ride?" His question wasn't a challenge, but an offering. Clara swallowed hard, memories of laughter and ridicule still fresh. "I want to, but I don't know if I can. Not with how folks are looking at me." Tom's expression softened. "Riding's not about what folks think. It's about trust between you and the horse, and between you and yourself. If you're willing to learn, I can help." His words stirred something fragile inside Clara, a glimmer of hope she hadn't dared to nurture. "You'd teach me?" "I'd be glad to," Tom replied. "Come by the ranch tomorrow. We'll start slow. I've got horses suited for every rider, and I'll show you how to handle them, step by step." The invitation felt like a lifeline. Clara looked around once more at the fading crowd, then back to Tom. "All right, I'll come." The next morning, Clara found herself standing at the gate of Tom's ranch, the early sunlight casting long shadows over the rolling fields. The scent of fresh hay and earth filled the air, and the soft nickers of horses echoed from the barn. Tom greeted her with a firm handshake and a reassuring smile. "We'll take it slow today," he said. "First, you need to learn how to read a horse's movements and moods. Riding's as much about understanding them as it is about balance and strength." Clara nodded, feeling the knot of anxiety loosen just a little. Tom led her to a gentle mare named Daisy, whose eyes were calm and steady. "She's patient and kind, perfect for beginners." Tom showed Clara how to approach Daisy, how to speak softly, and offer her hand to sniff. He explained the importance of calmness and confidence, even when fear crept in. Clara listened intently, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached out to touch the mare's warm neck. Over the hours, Tom guided Clara through exercises to build her familiarity and trust with Daisy. He encouraged her to stroke the mare's coat, to learn her reactions, and to practice mounting with care. Each small success was met with Tom's quiet praise, and Clara found herself relaxing in the rhythm of the work. The physical effort was demanding, her muscles aching in places she hadn't known were used for riding. Yet, with each attempt, her confidence grew. Tom adjusted the saddle and reins to fit her comfortably, explaining that every rider's needs were different. His patience never wavered, and his belief in her ability became a steady undercurrent that buoyed her spirits. At one point, Clara faltered, nearly losing her balance as the mare shifted unexpectedly. The old fears surged, and she pulled back, eyes brimming with tears. Tom stepped close, steadying her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's all right to be scared," he said softly. "Riding's a dance with the unknown, but every rider stumbles before they find their footing. You're stronger than you think." His words settled over her like a balm. Clara wiped her cheeks and nodded. "I want to keep trying. I don't want to let fear win." Tom smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "That's the spirit. We'll take it one step at a time. You've got what it takes." As days turned into weeks, Clara returned to Tom's ranch regularly. Each visit brought new lessons and small victories. She learned to guide Daisy through gentle turns, to keep her balance as the mare walked and trotted, and to trust the horse's instincts as much as her own. The townspeople's laughter and whispers still haunted the edges of her mind, but Tom's steady encouragement helped her push past the doubt. She began to see herself not as a subject of ridicule, but as someone capable and growing. Their relationship deepened beyond teacher and student. Over shared moments by the barn, they spoke of their lives, Tom of the hardships and joys of ranching, the loss of his father, and his dreams for the future. Clara shared pieces of her story too, the years of loneliness and judgment, the secret longing to belong somewhere. Tom listened without judgment, offering understanding instead of pity. His faith in her became a mirror reflecting the strength she had always carried but never fully acknowledged. One afternoon, after a particularly good ride, Tom handed Clara a cup of water and said, "You've come a long way, not just with riding, but with believing in yourself. That's the hardest part." Clara took the cup, her fingers still slightly shaky, and smiled softly. I never thought I'd feel this way. Like I can actually do something I thought was impossible. Tom nodded, his eyes bright. And you're just getting started. There's a whole world out there waiting for you. I'm glad I get to help you find your way. As the sun dipped lower behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Clara sat atop Daisy once more. The wind whispered through the open fields, carrying away the echoes of laughter that had so long shadowed her steps. With Tom by her side, she felt a quiet hope beginning to bloom, an unspoken promise that she was no longer alone in this journey. The day of the community rodeo arrived with a sky so brilliantly blue it seemed to promise miracles. The town square was alive with the hum of anticipation as vendors set up their stalls and the scent of frying pies drifted through the air. Faces from all over gathered to watch the spectacle, including the very same townspeople who had once jeered at Clara. They whispered among themselves, eyes flickering toward the corral where riders prepared their mounts. Clara stood beside Tom, her hands steady but her heart hammering with a mix of excitement and nerves. The soft brown mare, Daisy, shifted beneath her, sensing the tension in its rider. Tom's steady presence was a balm. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Remember, you've done this before. Trust yourself and Daisy. A ripple of murmurs fluttered through the crowd as Clara stepped into the arena. The same skeptical eyes that once mocked her now watched with a different kind of scrutiny. Some wore thinly veiled smirks, others whispered doubts, but a few held expressions of surprise, curiosity, even encouragement. Look who's back, a voice sneered from the edge. Think she's got what it takes this time? Tom's eyes hardened as he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chatter. She's already done more than most here ever will. His tone brooked no argument, and the crowd quieted, the weight of his words settling over them like a firm hand. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the power of that support ripple through her. The jeers and laughter that had once threatened to unravel her now felt like distant echoes, muted by the growing confidence within her. She guided Daisy toward the center of the arena, the mare's steady steps matching her own steadiness. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, introducing Clara as a participant in the riding contest. A few scattered claps rose, tentative but genuine. Clara's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from a budding pride. She settled deep in the saddle, fingers light on the reins, eyes fixed ahead. As the signal was given, Clara urged Daisy into a gentle trot, then a smooth canter. The crowd watched as she maneuvered the mare through a series of cones and small jumps, each movement more assured than the last. The rhythm between rider and horse was unmistakable, a quiet conversation of trust and balance that spoke louder than any words. Gasps and murmurs replaced the earlier jeers. Faces once filled with doubt now held expressions of awe and respect. Clara's heart soared as she realized she was no longer performing for the approval of others, but riding for herself. When she brought Daisy to a graceful halt at the end of the course, the crowd erupted in applause. The sound washed over Clara like a warm tide, lifting her spirits higher than she had ever dared to dream. She glanced at Tom, whose smile was wide and proud, eyes shining with genuine admiration. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Tom and Clara found a quiet spot near the barn. The weight of the day's triumph settled between them like a shared secret. Clara's voice was soft, but steady as she spoke. I never thought I'd be able to do that. I was so sure I'd fail, that I'd just be the joke again. Tom nodded, his gaze thoughtful. It's not about never falling. It's about getting back up and riding again. You showed them, and yourself, what you're made of. Clara looked down, fiddling with the reins in her hands. I've spent so long feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I was invisible, or just a burden. Tom's expression softened. You're not invisible. You're not a burden. You're strong and brave, Clara. And you deserve to be seen for that. A silence stretched between them, comfortable and filled with unspoken understanding. Then, Clara took a breath and looked up at Tom. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. He smiled, a slow, genuine curve of his lips. That's what friends do. And maybe something more. Clara's heart skipped, but she didn't shy away. Instead, she met his gaze, the connection between them deepening with every shared word, every glance. They spoke then of their past struggles, Tom of the loneliness that came with running a ranch alone, the losses that shaped him, Clara of the years of ridicule and self-doubt. Their stories intertwined like threads in a tapestry, revealing wounds and hopes, fears and courage. Each revelation brought them closer, forging a bond built on honesty and respect. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the barnyard, Clara felt something shift inside her. The doubts that once ruled her seemed smaller now, held at bay by the strength she found in herself and in Tom's steadfast support. The rodeo had changed more than just the way the crowd saw her. It had changed the way she saw herself. No longer a subject of ridicule, she had become a rider, a contender, a woman who could face fear and come through stronger. And beside her, Tom stood ready to face whatever came next, their companionship a beacon in the uncertain days ahead. In the days following the rodeo, whispers began to spread through the town like a gentle breeze shifting the stale air. The same people who had once jeered at Clara now approached her with hesitant smiles and lowered gazes, their voices softer with apology. At the general store, Mrs. Whitaker, who had once joined in the laughter, now caught Clara's eye and offered a sincere nod. "You rode well, Clara. I'm sorry I didn't believe you could." Clara's heart fluttered with a mix of surprise and relief. The shift in the community's attitude was subtle but unmistakable, a quiet acknowledgement that she was more than the cruel jokes they had made. She returned the nod with a small smile, feeling the heavy weight of judgment begin to lift from her shoulders. One afternoon, as Clara tended to Daisy in the barn, a familiar voice called from the open doorway. "Clara, you've got a moment?" She turned to see Tom stepping inside, his boots leaving faint dust trails on the wooden floor. In his hands, he carried a worn leather saddle and a coiled rope. "I've been thinking," he said, setting the saddle down carefully, "that you've come far enough to have a place here. At the ranch." Clara blinked, her breath catching. The invitation was more than she expected, more than she dared hope for. "A place here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Tom replied, his eyes steady and warm. "You've worked hard, learned a lot, and you belong. If you want, you can stay, help out, and keep growing. This ranch isn't just mine. It's a place for those who want to be part of something real." Her mind raced, memories of loneliness and rejection clashing with the promise of belonging. The offer was a lifeline, a chance to rewrite her story. "I want that," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I want to stay." Tom's smile was slow but full of meaning. "Good. Because I want you here." As the weeks passed, Clara settled into her new life on the ranch. The days were filled with hard work and steady progress, feeding horses, mending fences, learning the rhythms of the land. The physical labor was demanding, but it grounded her in a way she had never known, each task a step toward a future she was finally beginning to believe in. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon in a blaze of amber and rose, Tom and Clara sat together on the porch, the quiet hum of crickets filling the cooling air. Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring, its silver band catching the last light of day. "Clara," he began, his voice steady but tender, "you've shown me what it means to have courage and heart. I don't want to face the future alone anymore. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner, in this life and whatever comes after?" Clara's breath caught, tears welling in her eyes, not from fear or doubt, but from a deep, overwhelming joy. The man who had seen her strength when others could not was asking her to share his life. She looked at him, her own smile radiant and sure. "Yes," she whispered, her voice firm and full of hope. "I will." The moment seemed to stretch, holding them in a bubble of quiet happiness. Behind them, the stars began to emerge, twinkling like promises in the night sky. When the matron from the boarding house arrived days later, accompanied by the girls who had once mocked Clara, their expressions were hard with disbelief and anger. They demanded that Clara return, their voices sharp with entitlement and scorn. But Tom stood between them and Clara, his stance protective and unwavering. "She's not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Clara's earned her place here. More than that, she's my wife." The words landed like thunder, silencing the group. The matron's mouth opened and closed, no reply coming, while the girls exchanged stunned glances. Without another word, they turned and left, their departure a quiet admission of defeat. Tom reached for Clara's hand, his grip warm and steady. Together, they watched the dust settle, the past shadows fading beneath the light of their shared future. Clara felt a swell of belonging and love she had never known. The cruel jokes and whispered doubts no longer defined her. She was a writer, a partner, a woman embraced by a community, and a man who saw her true worth. As they stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Clara knew this was only the beginning. A story of resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond forged between two souls daring to believe in each other.